Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we are having a look at Football Manager 2016, which is due to be released on the 13th of November. We're going to have a look at some of the new features that have been announced so far, and I'll give you an overview of the game and where it's going, and also my opinion on whether the features that have been announced are what the game needs, and also maybe some gaps that haven't been addressed so far. So just to give you a bit of a background, I've been playing Football Manager since 2008, I believe, was the first one that I purchased. So given that I'm from Australia, for football or soccer as it's called here, is not a major sport in the country, or it wasn't, especially back then. It's definitely growing in recent times, which is brilliant. So I sort of didn't grow up knowing about football and knowing about tactics or anything like that. So it took me a long time, I guess, to sort of get to grips with the game, and I sort of really got involved in a lot of the tactics or the tactical side of Football Manager, and really enjoyed that side of the game. So over the last 5 years, I just had a look on Steam just before. Over the last 5 versions of the game, I've actually clocked up around about 1,200 hours, which is a little bit scary. All that time spent on Football Manager, even though it was enormous fun, I'm sure that there are potentially other productive things that I could have been doing with my time. But like I said, it was enormous fun, so that is really all that matters at the end of the day. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a jump over and have a look at some of the key features that have been announced already. So the first thing we've got is the Manger on the touchline. So basically this is sort of like it kind of reminds me a little bit of a Sims. So basically you create your manager, their appearance and all this kind of stuff. So all this kind of stuff looks pretty much superficial, just so you can see them on the touchline, as you can see down here, which is a pretty cool new feature. I guess it seems like some of the features that have been announced so far, it does seem a little bit superficial, perhaps. Like, I'm not trying to be negative in any way, shape, or form, but I guess that it's probably is a little bit underwhelming, just from my perspective. Well, this is obviously it's just all of this is my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. So I mean, it is pretty cool. You're going to be able to see your own manager, and it'll definitely add a lot of buy-in into the game. So you may sort of associate with your manager a lot more if you can actually see them and customize them and all that kind of stuff. So it could be very good for any game, but maybe especially for long-term games. So that is quite a cool feature there. So that's the first one. Next one is a fantasy draft, which is an entirely new game mode. So basically what this is, what it appears to be, from my perspective, is that you will have a whole like a talent pool or a player pool. If you got in this second screenshot down here, it's actually got like 5,963 players, which is like a fantasy or like a player pool. I'm assuming you're going to be able to choose where they come from and all that kind of thing. So maybe like top level clubs in Europe or continental competitions or things like that. And basically from there, you have a fixed budget and you have to build your team, and you're actually competing with all the other managers in your league to actually build a team, and then you compete with everybody else in that league, and that could be quite fun. So I mean, that is quite a new feature. Definitely sort of a step away from where Football Manager has gone before. There is sort of something that I'll mention just after we have a look at the next feature. So just have a look at some of the screenshots here. So it looks all pretty simple, and could be quite an interesting game or interesting mode of game to play. So next one we've got here is actually create a club. So this is basically you build a club from scratch, and you can choose their name and what league they play in, their reputation and finances and stadium and all that kind of stuff. So, and the squad obviously as well. So that is going to be quite interesting. I'm sure some people will definitely enjoy that. What I'm going to sort of say here is about this feature, so the create a club feature, and also the fantasy draft, is that these are almost things that could have been done previously in the game, especially the create a club mode. So in the editor, Football Manager editor, which was sort of freely available, it was quite simple to actually create a club from scratch and pretty much do everything that it looks like we're going to be able to do here. So all this is really doing is sort of bringing this into the front end, which I mean is good for people that aren't involved in the editor. The editor was pretty simple, but I mean, I know a lot of people sort of aren't into that. But I guess for me, it seems a little bit superficial, perhaps. I wouldn't have thought this would have taken them an enormous amount of time. Not that I have any program knowledge or anything like that, but if it's looks like it's sort of basically putting a skin to what was already available in the editor. The fantasy draft is a little bit different. I mean, it could have been done before, but not in sort of like a bidding process. So that is quite a cool new feature, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm not sure whether it's going to get an enormous amount of use. So that's sort of something I'll touch on later on in the video, sort of talking about the actual core like player of Football Manager and what they want and all that kind of thing. So we're going to move down into the next features. We've got multi-match highlights. Basically, it is just a highlights package. So similar to what you can actually get on many match of the day programs and things like that. I'm not sure that really a whole lot of people are going to be particularly interested in that. So I can't imagine that, like just for me personally, that I'm going to sort of sit down at the end of each round and look at all the goals that were scored during the matches or during the round of play. So I personally can't really see myself using that one, but it could be I guess an interesting feature. So if you're sort of really interested in the league and getting into a lot of detail and stuff like that, it could be quite interesting for you. This is probably the biggest feature that really sort of interests me, and like I said, it is my opinion, and this is sort of the area of the game that I really enjoy. So I've actually added in Prozone match analysis, and so basically it looks like it's going to take the match analysis to a completely different level. So I've actually got a whole new stat screen here, which is quite exciting. So obviously taking it from Prozone. And it looks like we can actually get into far more detail than what was previously available, and a lot more customization as well and things like that. So that is going to be a really cool feature, I think, especially as a lot of people in the last couple of versions, a lot of people have really struggled, to actually get into the game and sort of work out how the tactical system works and how to sort of make it play to their advantage. So that could be quite good as well. And I actually had a look on the forums before, and apparently there's actually going to be a guide produced for the game. So it's almost like a walkthrough guide or a tactical guide. So SI Games have actually produced, or paying someone to produce a proper guide, which I think is probably something that's been lacking from the game for a long time. So the tactical model has undergone a lot of changes over the last few years. So anyone who's played the game would know this, but anyone sort of new to Football Manager may not know this. So it sort of went from a slider-based, sort of very numbers, very specific, and very complex, and very hard to understand. And a lot of people really struggle with that. And then they sort of brought it more into more of a holistic point of view, a tactical creator. So you're more sort of giving instructions, and they're not really dealing with numbers anymore. So you're actually not dealing with numbers at all. So it's all about like position roles and styles of play and things like that. So they're trying to make it a lot more user-friendly, a lot more realistic as well, which I think is a fantastic way to get into, or fantastic direction to take the series. And it's sort of something that's been needed for a little while. But the problem is that a lot of the descriptions can be counterintuitive. You don't get a lot of understanding about if you make one decision, how does that actually impact 6 other areas of your team's play or your tactical framework. So that is something that a lot of people really struggle with. So if they can actually produce a really good guide, I think it's going to help a lot of people and sort of take a lot of the angst out of early releases, and a lot of new players really struggle to get into it. So that is going to be really good. This is my second favorite feature that has been announced for FM 2016, and it is the set piece creator. So basically it looks like we're going to be able to create specific set piece routines, which is absolutely brilliant, because I got very sick of seeing my set piece takers blasted over the net 10 times during a match from 20 yards out and things like that. So it's going to be really good to be able to sort of have a completely customizable set piece routine. And it's just going to add a whole lot more enjoyment in the game when we can, you're going through a game, get a set piece, and you see that a set piece that you've actually created actually result in a goal, and especially like in a big game, like a final or something like that. It's just going to, I think, it's just add a lot more enjoyment, a lot more satisfaction, and a lot more sort of immersion into the game. So that is pretty cool. Next thing is expanded press interaction. So this looks like it says press conferences are more varied than ever before, with many new conversations to be had with the press, especially more contextual questions and responses. This is a feature that does absolutely nothing for me. So I think press conferences, for me personally, and I think a big section of the game, just from what I've been reading in the forums over the last years. Press conferences don't really do a lot for many people. Like, I know that's definitely a feature that sort of has to be very realistic, because press conferences are a massive part of modern football and the way that sort of media dominates opinions and things like that. So it definitely has to be in the game. I'm not sure that it's done in the right way and has sort of a big enough impact. It is sort of very predictable after a while, and you can sort of really get through with a cookie cutter formula, which I don't think, it's not really the way that I think it should be done. So I'm not sure if you guys can see, but like, we've actually sort of got stances here. So like calm, assertive, cautious, and passionate. So these are sort of ways that you can answer questions, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem realistic enough for me. And in all my games, so whether I'm playing like one season, half a season, or a long-term 10, 15, 20-year career, I actually automate pretty much all of the press conferences, and sometimes I'll sort of take a few of them. So I do new player signings, because it's good, you can actually give them a boost and help them sort of bed into the club a little bit better. But sort of weekly press conferences, I just find, are usually a waste of time. And if you have a half decent assistant manager who can sort of handle them, then they're better off just left in his hands, and it's just not worth it. So this one doesn't really do anything for me. It looks like it's just going to be sort of more of the same, but more options. And the problem, I guess, with press conferences from my point of view is that you play a 10-year career and you're going to see every answer or every possible combination under the sun, hundreds of times. So in the end, it really sort of just seems like hard work, really, rather than fun. So that one doesn't do a whole lot for me. So next one is Football Manager Touch. So this is basically the streamlined version of Football Manager. It's been renamed this year. And what we have here, so it looks like it's pretty much the same game, but it's just going to be cross-save compatible. So if you're playing it on a tablet or your computer, you can actually sort of play the same version of your save, between a computer and a tablet, which is going to be really good for a lot of people that play this game. I know a lot of people in the last couple of years have actually moved over to the streamlined version of Football Manager. So the actual standard version, Football Manager Classic, is very in-depth. So you can have complete control over everything, like training and scouting and transfers and match and player development and all that kind of stuff. So it can take a very long time to actually get through seasons and games. And a lot of people, who maybe in their 30s with a family and a career and all that kind of stuff, just don't have the time to develop or to devote to the full version of Football Manager. So it's probably going to be really good for them. So it's not a version that I personally play, but I'm sure that a lot of people will get a lot of value from that. So it's good. Next thing we've got is more realistic injuries. So I'm sure this would be good to just give a little bit more realistic injuries in the game, and also the way they're treated and stuff like that. So hopefully there's a little bit more information around injuries, the causes of them, and how they're treated. So it has been a little bit vague in some games, a little bit sort of to chance. But that is quite good. So more realistic injuries is always a good thing. So it's got and much more. So I'm just going to read this out for you guys. Further additions and updates include staff shortlisting, improved manager and staff movement, revised board requests, a revamp of board confidence, more contextual team talks, fully updated competition rules and squad information, an improved financial module, improved AI transfers and team selection, new social media features, and many more. So I'm going to point out a few of those there. What really sort of jumps out at me is an improved financial model, and also improved AI transfers and team selection. And the reason these jump out at me is I tend to play quite lengthy games. So it's not unusual for me to play 5, 10, even up to sort of 20 season careers, which I know like a lot of people play a lot longer than that, but that's sort of usually by the time I get to 20 seasons I've achieved what I want to and all that kind of stuff. So but the big problem that you get, the further you go into the game, the worse that the AI teams basically become. So their team building and team selection and stuff becomes really rubbish, and you get a lot of teams stacked with very unrealistic team rosters and team builds and all that kind of stuff. So it can be it can be quite, I guess, a sort of a realism killer the further on you get into the game. And also that financial model, it is sort of a little bit simplistic at the moment, I believe. But I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I know a lot of people aren't sort of interested in that side of things, but I do read the Swiss Ramble. If you guys know, it's a guy that writes He's an accountant or an economist, I believe, and he writes sort of basically summaries of football team or football club finances and things like that. It's really, really interesting to actually sort of see how the clubs are run and all that kind of stuff. So an improved financial model, I'm not sure what aspect or what shape it's actually going to take, is sort of a good thing in my eyes. So that is really good. More contextual team talks could be really good. So team talks are really quite good for motivation, and they can actually, if you know how they work, they can actually have an enormous impact within games. So if you had a really bad first half and your team's not really on fire and working for you, you can actually get them fired up and get them playing the way you should do if you know how to sort of work the team talk model. So that could be quite an interesting thing. Everything else sort of seems pretty stock standard. But sort of increased or improved Manger and staff movement could be quite interesting to sort of see how that works. And it's actually down here, sort of a screen. It looks like we've actually got like a little bit of a change to some of the tactical screens, which would be quite interesting to sort of see what direction they take in there. And that's pretty much everything that we can see from there. So it's going to jump into the Steam screen back again. So the game is set to be released on the 13th of November. If you buy it in pre-release, you actually get access to the beta, which is going to be available approximately 2 weeks before the game. So even though it's called a beta, it's pretty much, I would have thought, 90 or 95% finished. Usually they don't make a whole range of changes, so there'll be hardly any substantial changes. There may be sort of a few bug fixes, a few minor little tweaks to maybe the match engine and things like that on release day, but generally they're not sort of a company that sort of does a huge, enormous release day. They may sort of do a first week or two patch if there's any glaring errors, but they sort of tend to do sort of big incremental patches and tie them into transfer windows and things like that. So definitely something, if you're sort of interested in the game, that getting the beta, so you're basically going to get the full version of the game a couple of weeks before, so that is pretty cool. So it is at $50 US, which is pretty stock standard. So if you're interested in that, then that is pretty good. So I'm going to jump into a game and have a little bit of a chat about, this, if you're not sort of interested in my opinion, may want to sort of stop the video here, but I'm just going to jump in and just sort of play a little bit of a background video, and just talk about sort of the game and have a little bit of a rant and ramble about where I think the game is going and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, I've been playing Football Manager for quite a few years, and really enjoy the game, really love it. I think it's made enormous strides compared to when I first started playing it. So even like the addition of the 3D match engine, like you can see here, that sort of changed the game for a lot of people, and you sort of moved away from the counters, and it made it a lot more accessible, a lot more interesting and things like that. So but I mean, talking about 3D match engine, like I know it's never ever going to be FIFA, and I don't expect it to be, and wouldn't really want it to be either. But like for me, someone who sort of is very interested in the tactical side of things, it's I actually sort of get a lot more, I think, benefit a lot of the times from the, like, even looking at things like the old 2D classic, where you can sort of see team structures and movement of players and things like that a lot better. So I definitely think the 3D match engine, like I wouldn't have thought it's going to undergo any major sort of new builds, new engine or anything like that within the next few years. I think they're sort of going for an incremental improvement model. So I mean, I think it's really good. It's definitely improved a lot from where it was, but there's sort of some issues that really irk some people. So there's a little bit of things like an ice skating effect that you can sort of see sometimes in players when they move across the pitch. And I mean, they've added things like player collision and stuff, which has added huge tactical implications into the game. So before, you could actually have, like a few years ago, if you haven't played the game before, you could actually have sort of a striker could actually run through defenders. So I mean, if you had a beast of a player, think of like an Ibrahimovic or somewhere like that, they could sort of basically, there was no sort of player collision, so they couldn't really sort of be stopped. So you sort of, it sort of really was a game breaker. So I know they've sort of moved away from a big focus has been, or big focus of SI has been, to actually sort of prevent like exploits and sort of game-breaking build. So basically now that you can't actually sort of have like a plug-and-play tactic. I mean, you can, but not going to get probably the results that you want. So it's really moving towards understanding the tactical framework and making a lot of adjustments, and I suppose it's probably a lot more realistic and things like that. So and that sort of brings me on to sort of the next and other point that I want to make about the game is that like I've spent a lot of time, a lot of years and stuff learning about the game, and like even though I'm by no means like a tactical expert or anything like that, and I read some of the articles that people put up in the tactics forums on the the game forums, and it's absolutely incredible that the work and effort they've gone to, and I was just sort of in awe of them and how much time and understanding they actually have of the game. And I'm definitely nowhere near that level, but I think I can generally sort of achieve most of the results that I want most of the time. But sometimes I go in there and read a lot of tactic articles and things like that. So it sort of really is interesting. But like I sort of mentioned before, a lot of people really struggle, especially new people into the game. And like even me, who's sort of been played the game for quite a few years, I sort of really do struggle sometimes to sort of wrap my head around the ways that the actual tactical creator and system sort of works. And there's sort of generally in the past been a reluctance from SI themselves to actually sort of confirm or deny that things work. And it's been left to members of the community to sort of build the guides and the articles and things to sort of explain stuff. So it really, really is good that they're sort of producing a proper guide, which they haven't done for a few years. So I think they did sort of do one quite a few years ago, sort of back in the 2009-10. For some reason that sort of rings a bell. I think there was sort of some sort of guide or something there that sort of rang a bell with me. But it really is good that they're doing something like that. So hopefully it's a little bit more of a nod to new people playing the game, and hopefully it's a lot more accessible to people. So I know a lot of people can be really daunted with the way things work, and it can sort of just seem overwhelming and all that kind of stuff. So, but it really is. I mean, if you're sort of watching this video and it sort of intrigues you, you love football, I would have thought if you love football, you already know about the game. But if not, like someone in Australia like me who soccer or football isn't something that we sort of have ever really grown up and been around a lot, but it does interest you and that kind of stuff. It definitely is a game that you should check out. And I definitely probably encourage you to buy a version of the game, especially if it's a new version. Probably fork out the money for FM16 for new people who already own like FM15, which is what this one is, or this version that you're watching now. I'm not quite sure personally whether the new features list really justifies $50. Like I know obviously you get the database upgrade, but people actually sort of do those themselves, so you can really sort of get that on your own if you want to put a little bit of time into downloading some updates and transfer updates and things like that. So for me personally, I'm probably going to hold out for a little while. I've got a lot of other games that I want to play, and I'll just sort of see what people's reactions are, and if there sort of are many changes into the match engine and the way the game plays and things like that, and what the new features actually do to the game. Because I mean, me personally, things like the fantasy lead and create a club, like I can imagine I'm going to play with it a couple of times, but that's not really where my interest in the game lies. And like I think like a lot of people who play the game, I mean, you're doing it to sort of live out your fantasy, really, aren't you? Like most of us are never like me, I've only ever really ever played football during school and all that kind of stuff, and most of us are living out our dreams of in some small way of managing our favorite clubs and achieving things that we're never going to be able to basically achieve in real life. So it is sort of we're looking to sort of mimic real life a lot of the time, and I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. So they want to play with their favorite club and play in like real competitions with current players, and try and replicate results that their club has had during the year, if their club's had like a really bad year. If they can do better and sort of, fix the problems that they've had and try out new tactics and things like that, and, buy the players that they want to, buy some world-class players and develop players and all that kind of stuff. So that's generally why a lot of people sort of don't play. Like I would have thought like a bigger percentage of the sort of the gaming base don't actually play sort of more than, one or two, sort of up to 5 seasons. I can't imagine a lot of them play sort of 10, 20 seasons. I would have thought most people are going to sort of play a few seasons, sort of with the current playing roster, what they know and what they love and all that kind of stuff. and that's sort of where their interest is going to lie. So for me personally, like, they're sort of a little bit not gimmicky, I guess. Like, I know there's obviously sort of a demand. They must be have done their research. Obviously, they're a very successful company, and they've done very well with the game over the years. So I assume they sort of would have done the research, and sort of there's a demand for this modes out there. But for me personally, a lot of what I've read, it doesn't really appeal to me a whole lot. So I'm personally probably going to wait and see. Like I said, check out some reviews, and especially on the forums with some of the experienced members on there that I've sort of been reading and stuff over the years, and see what they think, and probably go from there. And maybe even, like, I know the game doesn't come on sale all that often, but it does sometimes. So maybe wait a few months and see how it goes. So there we go. Go guys. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you have a bit of an idea about where the game is, what it's all about, some of the new features, and then you've heard me rant and ramble on about nothing in particular right at the end there. So I'm actually going to end the video here, and I hope you've sort of learned something. I hope it's been mildly useful. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the new features and where the game's going and all that kind of stuff. So it's always really interesting to connect with other people that are playing the game. So if you're at all watching this video, definitely leave a comment and let me know what you think. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you have had a wonderful day from wherever you are watching, and I'll see you all soon.